Some observations on the flood narrative from Genesis 6 through Genesis 9 and then 10 are descendants of Noah. Noah is said to be righteous in his generation. Now, what does that mean? Well, it also says that Noah walked with God. Adam and Eve walked with God in the garden. Enoch walked with God and was taken. Noah is one who walks with God. Abram will be told to walk before God. This is Noah being righteous in his generation. There is no law that God has given, like God gave the law to Moses on Mount Sinai, and God spoke the law to the people who were gathered before Mount Sinai. So walking with the Lord God is what makes the difference, I think. We will hear that word for walk also in Ephesians, about the one who is righteous will walk in, and it gives a list of the ways he will walk in, which is the ways of the Lord. So it's actually the fellowship with the living God that makes the difference. We can talk all about the law, and we will later, but what makes one righteous is the relationship with God, which, of course, we see much later in the Gospels and then in the New Testament. The flood itself, the rain comes down, yes, but the floods underneath are brought up in fountains. It's like the divisions of the waters above and below in Genesis. Those divisions are removed. It is like starting all over with Noah, his wife, his sons and his sons' wives, and a pair of every animal, two of each kind, and then 7 pairs of the clean animals in the ark. They are spared. Now, after the water subsides, there's God's covenant with Noah, and then God's covenant with every living thing. But God's covenant with humanity, in that even though man's heart is evil continually still, God will not bring another flood to destroy all flesh upon the earth. But God does declare that whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed. So there is a prohibition against killing. It would be worth noting the violence that is mentioned before the flood. There are at least 2 kinds of violations going on, and I don't want to necessarily go into them in detail or speculate about the one kind. But God will continue the creation and no longer bring a flood to destroy all that has the breath of life. Then there are the descendants of Noah. And as we read all the genealogies, we should find that there are whole nations mentioned that we will see later, and cities and kingdoms mentioned later that these ancestors come from. Now, this all seems so very far-fetched, but actually there is some extra-biblical material of ancient people that do claim to be descendants of persons from this flood, from this genealogy, and even going before Noah. And you could find this out. There is evidence in the University of Pennsylvania Museum of Anthropology and Archaeology in Philadelphia. There is the tomb of the headdress of a woman entombed in Ur of the Chaldees, and her line, she is claimed, comes from a line of what we call the Chaldeans' Kings List. And the Chaldeans' Kings List has an exact parallel in the genealogy, one of the genealogies we find in Genesis. There is not an ancient people that we know of that does not have a flood narrative. It's in all the ancient cultures. And of course, they have stories about it that are different from this one, but there is a flood narrative in every ancient culture that we know of. And yes, we have several nations that come through Noah, through this genealogy, and there's some extra biblical archaeological evidence that exactly parallels and ties in with these early chapters in our Bible, which seems extraordinary, but it is the case. And yeah, the one people that were interested in where everybody comes from and interested in history and pass it on are those ancient Jews. And here is their account. So I think it's fascinating stuff. Thank you very much. I hope this is of some encouragement and help.